At 76, one of Hollywood's most iconic leading men lives in exile, not in disgrace or failure, but by choice. This is the man who made the world fall in love with Pretty Woman, who for decades embodied charm, romance, and desire on the big screen, a global sex symbol who could have had anything Hollywood offered. And yet today he lives quietly in Madrid with his wife and young children. He's banned from the world's largest film market and largely absent from the industry that once crowned him king. Yet what makes his story remarkable is not that he was pushed out, but that he walked away. While others chased billion-dollar franchises and studio approval, he chose principle over profit. He listened to a Tibetan monk instead of a movie mogul. He traded red carpets for refugee camps. When told to stay silent or risk everything, he chose to speak louder. Richard Gere was born Richard Tiffany Gere on August 31st, 1949, in Philadelphia. But his childhood unfolded in Syracuse, New York, small town of about 5,000 people with a single movie theater, ironically named Hollywood. His father, Homer George Gere, was an insurance agent with the soul of a Methodist minister, a man neighbors turned to for guidance and comfort. His mother, Doris Ann, filled their modest home with music. Richard, the second of 5 children and the eldest son, grew up disciplined yet restless. He played piano, guitar, and trumpet, excelled at gymnastics, and graduated in 1967 with a scholarship to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where he chose to study philosophy, not business or law philosophy. He carried Jean-Paul Sartre under his arm, searching for answers to questions that burned inside him. What is existence? What is reality? After 2 years, college felt suffocating. He dropped out with no degree and no backup plan, moving to New York City in 1969 to pursue acting. He worked in theater, sometimes sleeping in his car between gigs. In 1973, he gained attention in the London stage production of Grease, playing Danny Zuko, before the role became famous on film. But the real turning point came in 1978, when he traveled to Nepal and encountered Tibetan Buddhism. Meeting the Dalai Lama transformed him. What began as curiosity became devotion. He meditated for hours, studied deeply, found a spiritual anchor that would guide every decision for the rest of his life. Hollywood soon came calling. Small roles led to breakthrough performances and Looking for Mr. Goodbar in Days of Heaven. But it was American Gigolo in 1980 that made him a star overnight. 2 years later, an officer and a gentleman cemented his status as one of the most bankable leading men in the world. He was handsome, magnetic, and seemingly unstoppable. Then in 1990, Pretty Woman exploded globally, pairing him with Julia Roberts and turning him into a romantic icon for a generation. Fame, fortune, adoration, he had it all. But behind the scenes, he was meditating each morning, questioning the very system elevating him. As his fame grew, so did his activism. His devotion to Tibet was not symbolic. He spoke openly against China's occupation and human rights abuses. In 1993, while presenting at the Academy Awards, he deviated from the script to condemn China publicly. The backlash was immediate. He was reportedly barred from presenting again. Studios grew cautious. China's market was too valuable, and Richard Gere had become politically inconvenient. He was officially banned from entering China and major. Studios quietly distanced themselves. Roles disappeared. Projects stalled. The industry that had celebrated him began to sideline him. His personal life mirrored the turbulence. His marriage to supermodel Cindy Crawford in 1991 captivated tabloids but ended in 1995. Later, he married actress Carrie Lowell and welcomed his first son Homer. That marriage also ended. Yet even as mainstream Hollywood cooled, he found creative renewal in independent films like Arbitrage, delivering performances critics praised as some of his finest. In 2002, he surprised audiences again by winning a Golden Globe for his role in Chicago, proving his talent ran deeper than his image. Then, in his mid-60s, he met Spanish publicist Alejandra Silva. Despite a 33-year age gap, he connected deeply through shared values and activism. They married in 2018, and at 69 and 70, he became a father again to 2 sons, Alexander and James. Fatherhood in his 70s transformed him. The restless seeker softened into a present, grounded parent. He embraced early mornings, school runs, and bedtime stories with the same dedication he once gave film roles in 2023. A bout of pneumonia during a family vacation was a stark reminder of mortality. At 73, with toddlers at home, illness carried new weight. He recovered, but the experience sharpened his awareness of time. Legacy became less about filmography and more about presence. He recorded messages for his children, wrote letters for future milestones, and focused on health and family. By 2024, he made another bold decision. He sold his American estate and moved with his family to Madrid, allowing his wife to be close to her roots and giving their children a bilingual, bicultural upbringing. In Spain, he found something rare for a lifelong star: anonymity. He could walk streets without cameras, live as a husband and father rather than a celebrity, though still occasionally acting, including roles in television projects. He no longer chased the spotlight. His net worth, built over decades, afforded comfort. But he spoke openly about not measuring life in possessions, even at international events like the Goya Awards, where he was honored for humanitarian work. He continued speaking candidly about global politics and authoritarianism. The cost of such honesty remained real, but he never retreated. He had already paid the price and accepted it. Today, Richard Gere lives not as the sex symbol of American Gigolo, nor solely as the romantic hero of Pretty Woman, but as a man who consciously chose a different metric for success. He sacrificed mainstream dominance for moral conviction. He accepted professional exile for spiritual alignment. He chose family over fame, presence over performance. The boy from Syracuse, who once searched philosophy books for meaning, ultimately found it in compassion, activism, and the laughter of his children. His journey reveals something Hollywood rarely advertises: that success and meaning are not always the same, that walking away can require more courage than climbing higher. That legacy is not built only on awards or box office numbers, but on integrity and the quiet consistency of showing up for the people who matter most. At 76, Richard Gere's greatest role is not on screen. It is the one he plays each day as a father, husband, activist, and man at peace with the cost of his convictions. And in that quiet continuation of his life, something even more profound has taken shape. The exile that once looked like loss has revealed itself as liberation. Free from the relentless machinery of Hollywood expectation, Richard Gere no longer has to perform a version of himself for public consumption. There are no image consultants shaping his narrative, no studio executives urging caution, no box office analysts measuring his worth in opening weekend numbers. There is simply a man in his late 70s who wakes up each morning aware that time is finite and chooses carefully how to spend it in Madrid. His days are structured around family rhythms rather than production schedules. He walks his sons to school, listens to their stories in 2 languages, and kneels to tie their shoes. The hands that once signed million-dollar contracts now hold crayons and pack lunches. He still meditates daily, sometimes before dawn, sometimes later when the house quiets. But meditation is no longer an escape from chaos. It is preparation for presence. He has said that aging strips away illusion. What remains, if you are lucky, is clarity. For him, clarity means understanding that the applause was always temporary. But fatherhood is immediate and irreplaceable. His activism has not faded with distance from America. If anything, it has deepened. He continues advocating for Tibetan rights, refugee protection, and global compassion. Produces and supports projects aligned with those values, including documentaries centered on the Dalai Lama's teachings. Yet his tone has shifted over the years. Where there was once fiery urgency, there is now steadiness. He no longer tries to convince everyone. He speaks for those who are listening and accepts that some never will. Physically, age makes itself known. The stamina that once carried him through long shoots and demanding roles now requires conservation. He prioritizes health in ways he never did at 40. Regular medical checkups, moderated routines, balanced meals. The pneumonia scare did not frighten him into panic. but it forced realism. He understands that with young children and an older body, every year matters. That awareness fuels an intentionality in everything he does. He chooses smaller projects, shorter commitments, meaningful scripts. If he works, it must matter. He has also become reflective about legacy in a way that surprises people. Rather than building an empire for his children to inherit, he has indicated that much of his wealth will support humanitarian causes and educational opportunities for disadvantaged youth. He believes inheritance without struggle can weaken character. What he wants his sons to inherit are values: compassion, curiosity, courage. He wants them to understand that their father walked away from power not because he failed, but because he measured success differently. There is a certain irony in how the industry now views him. Younger actors speak of him with respect. Directors reference his performances as masterclasses in restraint and vulnerability. Film students study An Officer and a Gentleman, Pretty Woman, and Chicago as cultural touchstones. The man once labeled difficult for his politics has become, in hindsight, principled. Time has softened some of the edges of controversy. Still, he does not romanticize the cost. There were years when the phone stopped ringing. Years when he knew roles were slipping away because of his stance on China. Moments when he wondered whether he could have balanced diplomacy with conviction more strategically. But whenever doubt surfaces, he returns to the same answer. He would choose the same path again, because to betray his beliefs would have fractured something more important than his career. He sometimes reflects on the young man who carried existential philosophy, books through Syracuse, searching for meaning. That young man believed meaning would arrive through understanding. The older man now understands that meaning arrives through alignment, when your actions reflect your deepest values. Acting brought him global recognition. Activism brought. Together, they formed a life that looks unconventional by Hollywood standards, but coherent by his own. At 76, he is not chasing relevance. He is practicing relevance in the smallest ways by listening to his children, by honoring his wife's roots in Spain, by speaking when silence would be easier. The world may remember him as the silver-haired romantic lead who defined an era of cinema. But the truer story is quieter, a man who stood at the height of fame and decided that inner peace mattered more than external applause. And perhaps that is the final evolution of Richard Gere's journey, not the ascent to stardom, nor the controversy of exile, nor even the late-in-life fatherhood that reshaped him, but the integration of all those chapters into a singular understanding that success without integrity is hollow, that love requires presence, that time is the only real currency. Every morning in Madrid, when two small boys call out for their father, he answers, "No spotlight, no script, no audience. Just a man who once conquered Hollywood and now measures his days not in accolades, but in moments." And as the years move forward, the rhythm of his life grows even simpler, even more deliberate. Richard Gere no longer feels the need to prove anything to critics, to studios, or even to himself. The hunger that once drove him to stage auditions, to blockbuster premieres, to awards ceremonies under blinding lights, has been replaced by something steadier: contentment. He has spoken privately about how aging reshapes ambition. In his 40s, ambition meant impact. In his 50s, it meant survival in an industry shifting beneath his feet. In his 60s, it meant purpose beyond fame. Now, in his 70s, ambition means longevity, career longevity, but life longevity. Staying healthy enough to see Alexander and James grow into men, staying present enough that when they think of childhood, they remember not a distant legend, but a father who showed up. There are afternoons in Madrid when he sits on a park bench, watching his sons play, unnoticed by most around him. The irony is almost poetic. Once a single appearance would have drawn crowds, now he blends into the background. And he prefers it that way. Fame, he has realized, is loud. Peace is quiet. Fame demands. Peace allows. His relationship with spirituality has matured too. The early years of Buddhism were intense, almost ascetic-long retreats, rigid practice, philosophical rigor. Today, his spirituality is woven gently into daily life, compassion in conversation, patience in parenting, gratitude in ordinary routines. He no longer needs dramatic pilgrimages to feel connected. The practice lives in how he treats the waiter at a cafe, how he listens when his wife speaks, how he kneels to eye level when his child is upset. Professionally, offers still arrive, though fewer and more selective. Directors who value depth. Over spectacle, reach out. Streaming platforms occasionally seek his gravitas for character-driven roles, but he filters everything through a simple question. Does this align with my life now? If filming means months away from his children, he declines. If a role conflicts with his values, he declines. The power he once had to command studios has been replaced by a quieter power. The ability to say no without fear. He has also become increasingly reflective about Hollywood itself. Not bitter, not resentful, just observant. He understands the system better now than he ever did at 30. He sees how markets shape art, how geopolitics influence casting, how silence is often rewarded more than courage. But he does not condemn it outright. He simply chose not to be shaped by it. There are evenings when he and Alejandra sit together after the boys are asleep, the house finally still. They talk about the future, about where they might live next, about education for the children, about the inevitability of aging. The age gap between them, once tabloid fodder, has transformed into a shared awareness of time. He knows he may not walk beside her for as many decades as younger husbands do. That knowledge does not create fear. It creates urgency to love well. Now, he has begun organizing old journals, photographs, and letters from decades past, snapshots from film sets, handwritten notes from activists, early scripts marked with annotations. Instead of preserving them as trophies, he arranges them as lessons, chapters of a life that evolved through contradiction. The romantic lead who sought detachment, the activist who thrived in an industry built on compromise, the global star who ended up craving obscurity. When asked what he hopes people remember about him, he no longer mentions films. He speaks of kindness, of standing up when it was inconvenient, of loving deeply without attachment to outcome. He understands that public memory is unpredictable. Some will always see him as the elegant man in a tuxedo from Pretty Woman. Others will remember the controversy, the bans, the political speeches. But he measures himself differently now. He measures himself in mornings survived after illness, in the sound of his sons laughing in Spanish and English, in the quiet pride of watching Homer carve his own path, in the knowledge that he did not betray his conscience for applause. There is something almost circular about his journey. The restless boy in Syracuse searched for meaning beyond the surface of things. The global star found himself drowning in. That energy will fade in increments. That one day his children will be tall enough to look him in the eye. That one day he may not be there to watch them, not his enemy. If there is a final lesson in Richard Gere's story, it is this. Exile can be self-liberation. Loss can be redirection. Fame can be a chapter, not the whole book. And meaning, real meaning, is rarely found at the center of attention. It is found in the margins where conviction meets sacrifice, where a man who once had the world at his feet chooses instead to sit cross-legged on the floor. When the sun rises over Madrid, he will wake again not as a symbol, not as a scandal, not as a headline, but as a father, a husband, a seeker who finally stopped searching and started living.